We're the first generation in history to live in a world characterized by continuous and unrelenting change. If we don't keep up, we run the risk of falling behind, losing touch with the world around us, losing our relevance, losing what it means to be us. That's what Willing to Win is all about. It's about coming together in new ways, like this show, creating new ways of thinking, new ways of working, and new ways of doing and achieving together. You know, they say every cell in your body is replaced about every 7 years. And when every cell in your body has been replaced, do you become an entirely new person? Physically, but not mentally. Because through it all, you remain. You maintain your awareness. You stay being you. Our shared world is not so lucky. There are no guarantees. There's nothing that ensures that we will not lose touch with who we are and end up in a future we don't recognize or don't belong. A nightmare or a dream. It's all up to us. And that's why the Willing to Win conversation is so necessary. Because tomorrow won't be legislated. The media can't control it. No one person, one country, one action can force its hand. No, tomorrow is being decided right now by you, your neighbors, your coworkers. And we vote with what we consume, how we live, and who we celebrate. It's the work of water coolers and boardrooms and bar rooms and schools and dinner tables, churches and temples. Because change is nothing more than an expression of our collaborative will. We decide. And if we don't see it, ignore it, or decide not to take part, we surrender our will to others who may not want what we want, who may not see the world the way that we see the world, who may not share our values. It's up to you. Willing to Win is taking place right now. Every day, all around you. Add your voice to the Willing to Win Legion and harness change for good. Or stay silent and take what comes. Tomorrow, like a drumbeat, shows up with each new dawn. Each day changed, different from the last, until we finally live in the world of our dreams, because way back when we made a choice. We joined the Legion and we let the world know that we're willing to win. If you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Welcome to Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas Getman. What a great launch to the new year with our mini season 2. And now we're sprinting into season 3. We're calling this Change, Chaos, and You.
Absolutely, because change is, with all the things we're talking about with this new world that we're trying to create, change is that thing that has so much mystique, so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So we're going to go and dedicate one entire mini season, 4 shows, to the subject of change. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what change means in society and how we can understand and predict it a little bit, get a little bit of control where we think there isn't any. And then in our next shows, we're going to break it down into 3 different areas. Show number 2 will be all about change in the environment. How can we sense the world around us changing, and what can we do about it, and how can we take advantage of it to make our own lives and our family and communities' lives better? The next show will be on change and information. How do you know what information to believe, and how do you know how to use the information that you've received? Because we have more information available than ever before. And then our final show, which could be so exciting in this mini series, is about change and experience. How do you sense changes that are happening around you to create experiences? Most importantly, how do you live your life the way you've always wanted to live your life in this new world? So it's very, very exciting. One of the things that we're going to talk about on this show when we think about change is really a breakthrough way to think about change. Change isn't this thing that just shows up unannounced, right? But change, in our view, in the Willing to Win view, is really an expression of collective will. So it's up to us to get involved in the conversation and be a part of creating that very change that until now we dreaded.
We have to mention your opening segment, the monologue from the edge, because you so eloquently captured that momentum and that energy that we need to learn to harness for good, right? Because so much of change is, as you described, either are you going to take an active or passive role? Are you going to take a front seat to the change that we know is coming and almost, utilize that unique opportunity we have to be a part of it so that it ultimately results in a positive impact versus negative one on our life? Share a little bit more about the insight that you talked about in that opening monologue. You have a passion for it, but why should we care about being an active participant? Why shouldn't we let change just come and sort of react to it like we so often do?
Well, when an era is characterized by something, meaning that's the thing that's the dominant feature or theme of an entire era, you really can't, just ignore it. Imagine if we just ignored technology, which was the big thing of the last, era, or before that we ignored farming or the Industrial Revolution. You really can't get away from it, right? But change isn't like those things because it's a concept, and we really have to get our head around what change is and what it means. And I think our first reaction is to be fearful. Right, is to think, oh, I don't understand this. I have, it means to me, change means to me uncertainty and doubt, right? People really conflate the idea of change with chaos, but change isn't chaos at all. Change can be great. As a matter of fact, I think this next generation, we're gonna try to build leaders that not only know how to handle change, but go out and seek it out. They actually seek to control change, and they try to create opportunities for their companies. And I tell you, we're not alone. There's a lot of talk about change everywhere right now.
100%. And we're so fortunate that we have a correspondent who's on it, who's investigating that very topic. Let's check in with what we're calling the socialite correspondent, Alyssa Nolte.
Socialite. So I was looking around social media to try and understand how people were talking about change, because change is certainly in the air. Everyone wants to change their future, change their careers, and understand how they can better their lives. But a lot of people are really trying to figure out how can they actually do those things, take those concrete steps. Let me give you a specific example. I was looking at change.org last night, and there are 478 million people who have petitions out there, things that you can go and lend your support for by signing your name in support and adding your signature. That's 1.5 petitions for every man, woman, and child in this country. And this popular petition site lets you create petitions for anything, stating what you want or don't want. And it's certainly one way of doing things. But it's important for us to understand that we have to have a cohesive vision for how we actually get things done. And that's what we're focused on here at Willing to Win.
It's incredible. In just one night, 1 million new petitions were springing up.
It's the future of Willing to Win. We should invite everyone. If you've got a petition out there on, what is it again?
It's change.org.
Change.org. Please join Willing to Win. We've got a place for you, and we think you get the idea.
That's right. You won't have to weed through millions of others to get noticed, right? You can join the conversation by going to our website, Willing to Win, willing2win.org. And we'd love for you to be a part of taking charge of your future by collectively joining in the conversation, not just about change, but how change can actually be sort of received in a positive way, right? Because the older we get, sometimes we get stuck in our ways.
Well, right. You got here today, right, because you used your senses. You were able to go into the studio. You were able to navigate the halls, use your sight, sound, your touch, whatever the senses are that you needed to navigate your environment. And when we think about change and our world being dominated by change for the foreseeable future, we need to start to develop tools that we can use to help us understand when change is coming, what it means, and how to respond to it. So the first tool we're going to give you is something that we've actually borrowed from the finance industry. It's been around for a generation, and it's called the Golden Cross.
The Golden Cross.
And the Golden Cross is basically a reference in finance that when two factors come together, if the factors go above a certain line, it represents a bull market. A really positive market may happen. And if it goes the other way, a negative Golden Cross, then you would basically end up in a bear market as a prediction. But we're not going to be using it that way. We're going to take that concept and we're going to talk about how we can use that to understand change, right? So here, we're going to do a graphic. This is a high-tech graphic. This is my level of expectations of the world around me, right? I'm an old school guy. I expect things to stay the same way as a straight line.
Steady as she goes.
Right? You know, maybe a younger person, theirs is like that, or something else. They have a different view, right? But then, as I interact with the world, those interaction points, right? Those interaction points create a new golden cross or an opportunity for us to interact with change. For example, you might have a new technology that comes out, and then it's, that it hits your expectation level. It's exactly what you were looking for, so you want to take advantage of that change. So we just want to start working with this concept, and over the next several episodes and over the next several mini seasons, we're going to be really exploring how we can use this and how businesses can use this to improve not only their lives, but their bottom line in business.
And this is the key. This is why you need to keep listening and digest some of this material that may seem complex, but it's practical in that a strategy like the Golden Cross is one of many we hope you can draw from in your mental toolbox as you consider, how am I going to cope with the change that I not just may have to experience, but the change that we know is inevitable.
Right. So let me give you an example that's one that you could sort of put yourself and you, the viewers at home, can be thinking about this too. If your expectation level changes, it goes up and down. You may have it look like that. Whatever the trend line is for your expectation level. If I gave you the topic furniture, would your expectation level be like that, or like that? Like, do you expect really big things out of tomorrow's furniture versus today's, or do you expect pretty much the same thing?
Probably not much has changed since what was a flowered print on my grandma's Davenport to really date me with a Midwest expression.
So that's a great example. And I don't know if you saw it, but recently they started a new campaign on television for a different kind of furniture. It's modular. It's made out of the same squares that you can stack and lock together however you want, sort of like Legos, right? You could put backs on it, put ends on it, but then inside you can simply pull back the outer layer that we would normally think of as something that we would never do, right? But you pull back that outer layer and you can insert technology right in to your furniture.
Cool.
So they have an option where you can do speakers, wireless speakers, right into the various components. The armrest can turn into a charger for your phone, things we never imagined. But the Iron Cross right now, which is our expectations and technology's ability to deliver, technology's way above what we can even imagine how to use it. So as a business person, I could think about that Iron Cross or that Golden Cross,
right,
and say to myself, oh my goodness, this is a real opportunity. How can I use this technology in a way that nobody's ever used it before and sort of blow people away? I use this not as an endorsement for that product or whatever, but I will tell you that four of my friends were watching that show, and when I mentioned it to them, they said, yeah, we stopped the TV, rewound it, and called our spouse in to have them see this because it was so amazing. That's when you know that you've used the Golden Cross in a very powerful way and you've created an opportunity for your organization. But it also, impacts us as individuals too.
Absolutely, but sometimes we know, if we're being honest, we get stuck, right, in that place of being stagnant.
Oh yeah, if you see a Golden Cross, but you don't take it,
then you're not going to progress. You're not going to kind of get with the times, as we like to think. So a great example comes to mind, and tell me if I'm hitting the mark with this. High school reunions. Sometimes we show up and we realize some of our classmates still have that same hairstyle that we've long ago abandoned with our teased bangs and Aquanet, right? Or the mullet, for example. So what is it about change that allows some of us to continue to evolve or keep up with that momentum, in contrast to those of us who visually and emotionally almost get stuck in a stagnant place where we never sort of raise our expectations as the opportunities and innovation presents itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And in no way are we critical of whether or not somebody chooses one, fashion or another.
And mullets are kind of back in style, right?
Everything old is new again, right?
Yeah.
Even a stop clock is right twice a day or whatever, right? So, but I think that the reality here is, as long as it's your choice, right? You don't want to be having somebody take a look at you at the reunion and say, oh, unrecognizable or exactly the same as when we left, only significantly older. Those are the things that those are choices that we want to make sure that our viewers make those choices, right? And it works the other way too. So there's somebody that doesn't take advantage of the Golden Cross when it happens, and then there are folks that take advantage of the Golden Cross, but they do too much of it, and people can't even consume it.
Yes. Oh, that's the case with cell phones. Okay. Cell phones and cars. Two great examples that you can all relate to, right? Because you're excited to get that new phone, that new device, because of that trick or tip that someone told you about that would really make your life easier, only to discover there are 100 extra bells and whistles that you're never going to use. You don't know what to do with, and frankly, I'm never going to peruse the user's manual to even know are there.
I gotta tell you, in the old days, technology was at work, right? But now technology is everywhere. And how do we consume technology, right? We get it as a present. We get excited. We rip off the paper off the box. We open up the box, throw away the instructions, take out the technology, start using it.
If there's even an instruction manual, now they want you to go online to read it.
Foreign language, right? And so we start to, and then when we're confused, we go to YouTube. And
That's right.
we have it done there. But I got to tell you something, I know that there are features we don't use, and sometimes we get the exact feature we want, and then we don't know how to use that, and that causes its own problems. I say that because of you, Tara. Have you ever had that happen to you?
You know of a very personal and dangerous example. My car, a newer vehicle, had the feature of the automatic parallel parking that you can do hands-free. I failed to realize that you have to keep your foot firmly placed on the brake as you're activating said feature. And when I almost, got whiplash being whipped into the spot, I realized that, yes, just because the technology is there or just because it's something I think I need, it's how we interact with it and how we accept the change, or in this case, the innovation, to determine whether it has a positive or negative impact on our life. And clearly, it would have been a benefit to my car insurance company had my rates gone up. Thankfully, there were no accidents involved in this particular example.
No, but I tell you, I did the same thing with a self-driving car. I'm driving, and it just wasn't responding. I mean, every time I took my hand off the wheel, it was like going into traffic and stuff. And then I realized I didn't have one of those cars. Right? No, you got to know that you have the technology and then know how to use it. But that's the whole point, right? We got to take
Don't try this at home.
Definitely.
Disclaimer,
Do not try this at home. But we did ask our correspondent, Alyssa Nolte, to take a little light look at the internet and give us a little socialite look
at what we can't entirely blame on ourselves, our sort of unwillingness to change. It turns out, Jeff, and Alyssa is just the woman to explain this, there is a scientific reason why you still might be holding on to those acid-washed jeans in your closet.
But that mullet looks great on you.
Socialite.
Yeah, Tara, actually research does support that our brains are at maximum openness to change in our 20s. So once we reach our 30s, we're more likely to never listen to new music again. Rather, we're enjoying the sounds of our youth. So I know that Jeff, unlike most people, has expanded his taste over time, and that's not true for most of us. So here I have a stat. Most people don't listen to new music once they hit age 33. Instead, they are focused on listening to things that they listened to back in high school, reliving those hits that they enjoyed in their 20s. So you can't judge your friend and high school classmate for rocking that hairstyle or rocking that outfit. It's not their fault. It's backed by science. Don't feel bad about holding on to those acid wash jeans, guys.
I will tell you, a lot of us, get stuck in a certain place in our life. I mean, for one example, I think that I've been to several of your 33rd birthday parties.
Just a few, yes, Jeff, if you must bring that up. You're so kind to say that. Yeah, more than a few. And that is what is so fascinating, really, is when you hear about the concept of sort of being stagnant or stuck. When it comes to things like music, you're an outlier because now you're saying in your later years you became a fan of jazz, something that you wouldn't have listened to when you were, say, in high school.
Yeah, so it was a different, experience for me, but everybody's, different. And I think the most important part is to recognize that change is there and that you have the choice in that change to either continue to evolve or to say, hey, this is me, this is where I'm most comfortable, so I'm going to be here, but I'm still going to learn about the changes that are out there and how other people are interacting so that I can still fit in and maintain my own relevance, right? And I think that what we now need to do is we've got this one tool that we can use called the Golden Cross, which sort of helps us identify, when an expectation has been exceeded, which means new products and new changes are coming right behind it, right? Expectations in our lives or in the world. And then we also need a tool that says, okay, well, maybe it hasn't happened yet, but remember I was saying, when you came to the studio today, you used all your senses to get there. Well, some of those senses aren't like right when the wall is in your face. You can plan ahead and sense, hey, that wall is coming, right? And so we teach ourselves to give us a range of opportunity, a range of safety. And so we're going to be calling this tool the Goldilocks zone.
The Goldilocks zone.
You remember the story, right?
Absolutely. How can we forget? And yet, who knew back then when we read that fabled tale that it turns out it was an analogy for our life? Because so many of us, like Goldilocks, when she went into the three bears' home, the porridge was either too hot, too cold, or just right. She was looking for that sweet spot. The bed was either too little, too big, or just right. And it's a metaphor for life, really, that I never had thought of until you explained, the thinking behind it.
Absolutely. And so the Goldilocks zone is really a tool that we're going to help you understand and use so that you could say, within this range of possibility, I'm willing to accept change. Anything outside that range, and we're going to have, much more of a conversation. And I will tell you, when you think about it, for impending change rather than things that are already happening, makes it a little easier to conceive of, right? If we think about it in that term, that organizations have been doing things with a Goldilocks zone for a while. And if you've been involved in business, you may have heard of a really tried and true way of evaluating the environment called a SWOT analysis, right?
Yes.
You look out in the world, you look out at certain conditions, and you say, oh, based on that, our product, our organization, our strategic plan has these certain strengths, that's the S, right? Threats, that's the T, or it will be able to create these changes, will be able to offer us new opportunities or show weaknesses that haven't been shown.
Right, so
in the
strengths,
past.
weaknesses, opportunities, threats, SWOT.
Right.
For
So
those
anybody
of you
who's
who
been
aren't familiar
through
with the
a
acronym.
basic, business class, that's it. And it's an exercise that we do, and it's quite a bit dated. But what we want you to start thinking about as your toolbox to determine that Goldilocks zone, how change is going to affect you, what change you want to respond to, is something called tempo. Tempo, T-E-M-P-O. And the T stands for time, right? So there's this change coming, and I want to know how it affects my time. Is it going to take away time from my children? Am I going to have time for my hobbies or to work out or whatever it is that's a priority for me? How is this change going to affect time? Expertise. When this change happens, do I have new responsibilities to learn things? Like when I buy a car, I kind of do have a responsibility to figure out how to drive it, right? And maintain all laws. So if it's got new technology, do I have a responsibility to know that too? If it does, you and I are both in trouble because we didn't do that. We just ignored the technology that wasn't intuitive to us, right? So what kind of expertise do we need to develop to stay current? And then what materials do we need? M, materials. Material is a military term for anything we can use in the battle. So what do I need to do that? Do I need printed instructions? Do I need to go out and create something or buy something? What else do I need to be able to address this change? And then we get to sort of the heart of it, right? Which is the P and the O. And the P is people. Right? People. So who are the people that I need to engage with that can maybe show me how I operate in this new environment? And I'll tell you, we do this without thinking about it. in your life, or at least in my life, I'm not sure how it is at your house, but my mom, the grandmother in the house, she has an IT department. It's called my kids, right? She calls them to turn it on. She's got streaming cable TV.
Right.
She needs the IT department. We come over and we help her do that. We're her people to help her in that environmental change where everything's technology, and she might not have that. And then we have to ask ourselves, when this change happens, what new opportunities might that open up to us? So it's a great thing to think about. Think about that Goldilocks zone and think about how we can assess that zone with TEMPO, time, expertise, materiel, people, and opportunities. It's a really great tool that we'll be exploring, a lot more in the coming weeks. But there are probably a couple examples, even in the last year or two, where it would have been really a good tool to have.
Absolutely, and I think we both, as parents and anyone who has the family structure where you're pulled in different directions, can relate to how often we feel guilty or we feel that we're not a supportive parent if we don't attend every single function, event,
oh my gosh.
art show. And the contrast is that isn't always the way it was.
No, I'm going to support. I'm not taking the story. I'm saying, hey, let's take a look at what that means. If we say that our expectation level just goes like that, and then the interaction with our children's right there, right? What we're saying is that somewhere along the line, because when I was a kid, you'd come home at the end of the season with your trophy and say, hey, we won the championship.
Look what I got.
And Dad would say, oh, you had a baseball season? Yeah. Now it's different, right? That expectation level through the roof. Think about your schedule in this last week.
Yes, 9 basketball games in 1 week for 2 kids that are young, that aren't even, heading to the NBA anytime soon. And so that is where tempo and that balance needs to come into play, because we need to look at sort of all the angles to determine how we want this change to impact us, how we're going to process it. And one example came to mind that I think anyone can relate to in the Midwest. When we think about going out after work where there's been a heavy snowfall and that snow-covered car, and you find your scraper buried in the back, and so many of us, again, don't try this at home, only want to scrape out that little hole just to be able to get us home, yet we don't have the big picture view. And what I love about the strategies that you're sharing with us and with this mini season, when we call it, change, chaos, and you, make sure that you're doing things in your life to proactively clear off the rest of the windows so you can see that 360-degree view, because guess what? The change that's coming at you, if you're only stuck in that tunnel vision and you're stagnant, you're going to miss that unique opportunity to, reach that golden cross for the benefit of your future.
Right, and if you use all these tools and you practice them and you become a change master, a tempo master of change, that will be like the clicker that just turns on the car for you and warms it up. So you don't have to do it.
Exactly.
I don't know how to do that. My car doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah, right. Well, that is something where, we anecdotally joke about how things impact our life in terms of our choices. But it turns out research shows there are implications for how you approach change, especially on the job when it comes to, that newfangled operating system that's going to come your way on the company computer. Let's check in with our socialite, Alyssa Nolte, who has a great example of how the way you respond to change is going to impact your future opportunities on the job.
Socialite.
The University of Chicago was working on a research study where they were trying to understand why some managers were thriving and some managers were really struggling as the Illinois Bell Company started to go through a process of change in the 1970s. And they found that there was one key difference between the thriving managers and the struggling managers. And that key difference was really simple. It was their perspective. The managers who thought that change was a key part of the human experience were thriving. They were looking for opportunities to change their lives, to change their futures, and to fix problems that they had with the old way of doing things. The managers who were struggling were constantly looking for ways to bounce back to the old ways of doing things. So that's one of the great things that we can do. We can change our perspective. But change can go too far. You might have heard a story a few years ago about Target getting in trouble with a father for sending some ads to his teenage daughter that were congratulating her on her new baby that she was going to have. They were sending her coupons for baby supplies, letting her know that they were going to have everything she needed for her new bundle of joy. But Target knew something that her father didn't. She was indeed expecting a new baby. Surprise! After storming into the store and letting Target know that he was very unhappy with this situation, he had to come back, hat in hand, and let them know that some things were happening in his household that he was not aware of. Well, it turns out that Target had really figured out the model to understand how to understand their customers through data. They had found that Goldilocks zone for their customers. Turns out that if you purchase cocoa butter, a bag large enough to hold diapers, and a blue rug, Target says you are 87% likely that you're pregnant. So now Target is understanding that we have to figure out the balance between what our shareholders need and making sure that we're delivering that personalized experience for our customers and not totally invading the privacy of those people we're trying to serve and creating that customer-centric experience.
I got to tell you, as a dad, I've heard that story before, but as a dad, that really is not the way you want to find out.
No.
Yeah, you don't want to find out news like that. And so, everybody was trying to do the right thing there, right? He was trying to protect his daughter. Target was trying to provide a good service. She was trying to buy good products and take care of herself. Everybody's doing the right thing. But if we don't address change, that's what happens.
Absolutely. And that's what this whole season is about. We're so excited that you've been a part of our Willing to Win Season 3 mini season as it kicks off. It's change, chaos, and you. And the toolbox that we want to recap, talk about the strategies. And I should give a shout out to our sultry songstress, Felicia Smith-Knowles, who's a part of our crew now, along with correspondent Alyssa Nolte, she's adding a lot to the broadcast with her research and insight.
Absolutely. We try to, little by little, we keep adding things, and hopefully the people at home are starting to see what we can do together. The first couple of seasons were really about level setting our audience with all the things that they should know about, where we are today. How did we get here, right? Season 3 and beyond is that shift to how do we take on the challenge of dealing with change and creating a tomorrow rather than simply allowing it to wash over us and having to respond to it after somebody else has decided. So for the next 3 episodes, we're going to really get involved. We're going to get really inside of change and understand it a little bit from 3 components. The next episode is all about change in the environment. How do we know when change is about to impact our environment and make our physical world different than it is today? That's very important for each of us to know so that we can prepare, because time is getting less and less between changes. We're going to have to respond much more quickly to what happens around us. The next episode is about information, and it really focuses on, with so much information coming from so many different places and sources, how do we know what information to trust, and then how do we take information and use it to impact our world and our communities and the people around us. And then finally, we're going to talk about change and experience, how we can create new experiences so that we can improve and create lives that we've only dreamed of right now with the technology and the world that we have as it is. So it's going to be very, very powerful, and we hope you're with us each and every episode.
Absolutely. We don't want you to be bystanders. We want you to be part of joining our momentum so that we can receive the change as it's coming, that's happening so rapidly around us for good and for the betterment of all of our lives. And speaking of bettering our lives, we have to give a Willing to Win kudos, a shout out, if you will, to 2 of our former guests. If you come on the show, great things could happen.
Absolutely.
Tiffany O'Donnell, she was one of our guests in a prior season. She has now gone on to win the mayoral seat. So she's the mayor of a very large Midwestern city. So congratulations to her.
Congratulations, Tiffany.
Yes, and Dr.
Absolutely.
Jared Smith, he was another guest, a longtime school administrator, a superintendent who, since coming on our show, has now landed a job in a very large school district in the Midwest as superintendent. So you never know what can happen, right? When you get interviewed on Willing to Win.
Willing to win, you get involved, good things happen to you. And good things will happen to you. Thanks so much for being a part of it.
Yeah, go to willingtowin.org, willing2win.org to check out this season and more. See you soon.